voicemail. So we're gonna have fun with this. Let's get it going right now.
You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, my name is Kevin Weiss.
I'm Ulises Sambrano.
And we're the host of the Locked On Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making us your very first listen every day. Be sure you check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Locked On Rays. We're also on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Rays. And email us anytime, preferably a voice memo, lockedonrays@gmail.com. Speaking of that, we have 3 more great voice memos to dive into on today's show. Again, this harkens back to the call out that we made that, hey, if you want to join the Locked On Rays Fantasy Baseball League, you got to do 2 things. You got to prove that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you have to send in a voice memo under 60 seconds with a question, comment, concern, or hot take regarding the Tampa Bay Rays. And we had terrific participation on that. So we're just running through those.
Yes, but by the way, we've gotten a couple of late submissions on the Fantasy Baseball League. We are sorry. The league has already been completed, guys. So we're very sorry. But yeah, it's already done.
Yeah. Now, if somebody drops out, last minute, they say, hey, can't do the Fantasy League, then perhaps we could work something out. But if I had to guess, the people that have spent the time, the effort, the energy to do all that, to send in a voice memo, I think they really, really want to participate in this thing. So without further ado, let's go into the mailbag. And this first one from Chase Ross.
My question is, with Tyler out and our easy April schedule, I want who will take his role in the rotation. I feel like Louis get a shot.
From Chase, of course, Tyler Glasnow missing some time the month of April, and Chase says that he'd like to see Louis Patiño get a shot. Ulises, I think we had discussed this briefly a couple weeks ago that Yonny Chirinos, I think, is the man for the job and at least deserves that first crack at it.
Yeah, I think so too. However, if you look at the competition between Chirinos, Patiño, and Fleming during spring training, none of them have shown themselves to be above the rest. It's kind of been mediocre results. And again, it's spring training. So if it's amazing or if it's horrible results, it really doesn't matter. But Chase, just so you know, between these 3 guys, Yonny has had 2 bad outings and 2 good ones. His last one was a really good one. I think he went 3 1/3 without allowing a run. Fleming had a horrible first outing and then has worked 4 straight outings without allowing a run. And then Patiño was the opposite. He had a good run of 3 outings or so, and then a miserable one last time out. So if you're looking for results during spring training to give you a guide on who is going to have the edge, they're all pretty much the same. So because they really nobody has really separated themselves from the pack. But I think that just means that Kevin Cash and company are not going to make a decision until they absolutely have to. But again, I would still give the edge to Yonny just because he's had more major league success than Patiño and Fleming.
And he had, correct me if I'm wrong, pretty decent showings when he came back for the Rays in September after being out. And let's also be frank. I mean, he has more prestige. I would think he's higher on the totem pole considering he's making $1.25 million. And I think Fleming and Luis Patiño are making league minimum. I mean, Josh Fleming, I don't know what he would have done to prove or show himself that he deserves another shot. I mean, his 21 and 22 ERA look like some people's credit scores. So I think, unless something drastically happens, I think it's Chirinos' job to lose. And I think the key for Chirinos is, the 3 really quality pitches that he has between the sinker, the splitter, and the slider, just keeping those down bottom of the zone, I think that's the key for him going forward. If he's able to do that, then he's going to have a lot of success. He gets into trouble when he leaves that up, middle, and high in the zone. So, and I just like that he's got, again, he's not going to necessarily blow people away, but just being able to pinpoint and see how those three pitches work off and divert off each other really can keep hitters off balance, whether it's a righty or a lefty.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, props to you for coming up with that credit score line. Jab, that was pretty good.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I just anecdotally speaking, I do think that Yonny has more swing and miss stuff than Josh Fleming does.
Oh yeah.
Just from my baseball archive brain, I am looking it up right now because Chirinos has. Let's see, in 2019, because there's no data for that in 2022. No data there. Damn. Okay. I really wanted that to.
I guess my point is he doesn't strike out as much as some other guys in the Rays rotation, but he can hold his own.
Yeah.
He's not necessarily a strikeout first pitcher. I would think that he's more of, as a sinker guy, that he's trying to induce more weak grounders to the second baseman or shortstop.
Yeah, and the sinker does get a lot of ground balls, and if you're just comparing them by velocity, it does have an edge. Yonny's fastball than Fleming's by 3 miles an hour, which is considerable in today's baseball. So, yeah, I just don't see Fleming winning that outright. And if he does, let's say Josh Fleming does, Chase, I don't think that they're going to use him as a starter. I think they would use him as a bulk guy. They would use the opener with Fleming. I don't see a scenario where they're going to put Fleming as an original starter that we know and love. With Yonny, though, I do see Yonny being put as an actual starter, and that's why I think he has the edge than to Fleming.
I think Yonny has shown over the last several years before he got hurt that he is a legit starter. On a bad team in number 3, on a good team in number 4, number 5. And, if and when Tyler Glasnow comes back, I think you can still maybe use Yonny as a spot starter, number 6 guy, or just bulk innings. I mean, look, it's a long season, so I don't think there's any issue or concern about Yonny not getting the opportunities that should be coming to him.
Yeah, and I'm looking. This is eerie. I don't know if my computer is doing some odd things right now, but if I look at the K rate total for Yonny is 22.1. Fleming's 22.1. If you look at the walk rate for Fleming, it's 8.1. Yonny's 8.1.
It's wild.
That is wild. That's crazy. And the hard hit percentage for Yonny is 35.8.
Yeah, but does
Fleming is 35.8?
Like 24 hits against the Boston Red Sox?
No. Yeah, I'm just noting that is very eerily, and I don't know if my computer is acting up, guys. So if you have completely different numbers, okay, then I guess so. But that's really odd.
Yeah. I think it's Fleming's agent back ending your computer and making changes to Baseball Savant or Fangraphs or whatever you're looking at. So, no, good question from Chase there. We've got more coming up, but first we have to tell you about FanDuel. The tournament is heating up, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel. It is America's #1 sportsbook. That's because new customers get a no sweat first bet for up to $1,000. That is bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. So just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Safe, secure, super easy to use. You can bet on everything, including the money line, point scores, and threes drained. Also, FanDuel lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. So do not miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet for up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/locked-on. That's FanDuel.com/LOCKEDON to learn more. Ulysses, you're laughing over there. What is so funny?
God, this is why you have to read. You got to learn to read, man. They are the same because it's the MLB average. All right, you genius. So I can give you the actual numbers now. Yonny's K rate is 20.9 lifetime, and Josh Fleming is 16.1. So yes, anecdotally, I was right. Yonny obviously gets more Ks than Fleming, and about the walk rate 5.9 for Fleming, and Yonny has 5.6. So yeah, I don't see that as a really competition. I just think Yonny should be the guy.
Now, if there's a podium, 1, 2, 3, is it Yonny, Patiño, then Fleming, or Yonny, Fleming, Patiño?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. I think that would depend on who you're facing. If it's righty power bats like Yankees, I would not want to see Josh Fleming there at all.
No.
At all. I would just. But again, Patiño
Luis
got lit up.
Experienced,
Patiño got lit up by the Yankees in an inning and a third last year in the last series. Remember that in an inning and a third, I think he allowed like 9 runs. Like, so just because you're righty against a righty lineup doesn't mean if you just don't have it, you don't have it. You're gonna get hit regardless.
Right. Yeah, I think some of it, and that's where you don't have to. I think with Yonny, I don't think you have to play the game of, okay, we got to look at this opposing lineup and see where are these guys hot zones and cold zones, where do they have the most swing and miss. I think you just roll out Yonny and you can roll with the punches there, where Patiño and Fleming, you have to play with them with more kid gloves, I guess, and more maneuvering and so forth, which again, maybe at the end of the day, when we look back, 4, 5, 6 years from now, maybe they turn out not to be legit starters. Maybe they're bullpen guys at the end of the day. So, all right, let's get to this next question from Chris Snyder.
What do you guys think is going to happen with Greg Jones? And do you think Mason Auer is going to be moved up to Durham this year?
Good question.
Good question. Well, Chris, you have been awesome and very diligently giving us feedback the last 3 months or 4 months or so. It's been really cool to get that feedback from you, Chris. Greg Jones, if you haven't heard, he will be trying a new position this year.
Yes.
He's going to be in the outfield. Obviously, shortstop is manned by somebody named Wander Franco, so he's not going anywhere, folks. So you got to make space for Greg Jones, and so that's what he'll be doing. I don't think that's going to be something that you can ask him to just get right away. I mean, I know that Jazz Chisholm is doing it for the Marlins at the MLB level. Just, hey, I'm going to play center field for you guys. Yeah. That's not easy, man. That's not an easy thing to do. So Greg Jones is going to have some hard, 2023 learning obstacles to get through in the outfield. It's just tough, man.
No. Again, I mean, we salivate at his athleticism and the combination of strength and speed, but he's got a lot of work. At this point, the Rays are more or less banking on a developmental prospect on their 40-man roster. He's 25 years old, and he's still in Double-A. Hasn't played more than 80 games in Double-A. And when he did play those 80 games in Double-A at 24, 25 years old, he struck out 36% of the time. Off-speed pitches just really, really do damage to him. So, and then you add in the fact of, just looking at it, he struck out 128 times in 358 plate appearances. The arm is, I think, drastically concerning as far as a defensive perspective goes. I mean, again, I'm just, and this is from scouting reports and what I saw in that spring training game I went to. Like, he really had to effort. Like, it was like lollipopped over there. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. Well, maybe I am exaggerating. That's what I do. But like when celebrities make, first pitches, like it looked like that. Like, not as bad as 50 Cent, but you get what I'm talking about. The arm is not there. It's an issue. Other issue too is you can't steal first unless the directive is, hey, any chance you get, try to bunt on. I just really don't know what to do with Greg Jones, because when he connects, it's awesome. When he's running the bases, it's awesome. But there are a lot of holes and issues in his game. And to me, I see that if he doesn't pick it up this year, then maybe it's just, he's trade fodder like Jesus Sanchez and Lucius Fox were for, a bit reliever or something like that.
Billy Hamilton can't steal first. You know, you
Yeah.
have to have some ability to get there. You can be a Terrence Gore, you know, multi World Series champion, Terrence Gore. Not a lot of people give him the props, but you know, you can just be a pinch runner
Right.
for a September call up and do your thing in the playoffs. Like but you got to hit something. You got to hit. And I do agree with you that the trade fodder is a possibility because a guy that can play shortstop at his level, which, you know, however you want to grade him, however analytics has him defensively speaking, if you at the outfield, and maybe that's something that he does the same or even maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit worse, he is going to be a little bit more salivating of a prospect for somebody else. So
Yeah.
you're also increasing his marketability by giving him the outfield glove. I just don't see a team like the Rays that has a notoriously anemic offense in the past. And for those that are yelling at me at about 2021, that's the outlier. And 2022, oh, the injuries, it still happened. Those were the results. And by the way, they were 15th in WRC plus at 101. So that's literally average. That's mediocre. Like
Yeah.
there's no getting around that. You can't just have, you know, 2022's Taylor Walls and Greg Joneses of the world just like occupying Brett Phillips. You can't do that. You have to let go of some of that defense and trade it for some bats because you can't just hope that your pitching staff is just going to go scoreless or keep it at 1 or 2 runs every single night. That's just not fair.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is, again, with the switch hitting thing, I think that you probably just need to pick a lane. If you're having this much struggles at AA at this age, it's what are you best at? Is it batting right-handed or batting left-handed? Looking at his numbers real quickly, obviously he had way more appearances versus right-handed pitchers, but he was more successful versus lefties. So maybe that, and he is a natural right-handed thrower. So maybe that's the thing of, hey, it's cool and all to have the power and speed combination, being a switch hitter and being an up the middle player, but at some point, you know, do the Cedric Mullins approach and ditch one side if that's really going to move everything forward. Now, as far as the second part of the question with Mason Auer, you know, I guess anything is possible. Maybe a September call up to AAA, but Mason Auer, if I recall, he hasn't even played AA yet, and there's still, you know, several names I think in the totem pole ahead of him, whether they're better prospects or not, just based on the experience and age factor that they would get more of that first crack. I'm looking at Cameron Meisner, Heriberto Hernandez, Greg Jones, Tristan Peters. I would think there's, you know, probably a half dozen guys in line for a call up before Mason Auer would be to AAA, and he hasn't even gotten to AA yet.
Exactly. I think he will start in AA this year. And if he does exactly what he did last year, then I think it's going to be very difficult for the Rays to say no to him for a late season promotion to AAA. But if I were a betting man, Chris, I would just say no. I think he just spends the whole year in AA, regardless of results, if he scorches the earth or not, because the Rays are usually conservative when it comes to position players promotions. Like they don't see the that's not in the philosophy to just rush them through. They need to face the AA pitchers, and as we've talked to so many prospects on the show, and if you haven't seen these interviews, go to YouTube. We have our own playlist for player interviews. Most of them say that the biggest adjustment comes from A ball to AA because now the guys can actually have some command. They're not just chucking the ball. So what better way to see if you actually have something in a position prospects now that you can actually have them face pitchers that know where the ball is heading. So that I would think not. Yeah. I think he stays there the whole year.
And going back to Greg Jones real quick, I mean, I know we made a Billy Hamilton comparison, and no disrespect to Billy Hamilton. I mean, he's played a decade in the big league, so he has carved out a niche and a spot for him. And I think that might be the case with Greg Jones. I would not expect Greg Jones to be an impact player at the big league level, but I think that he could squeeze and set himself onto some sort of big league roster for a couple years as, that speed guy or that defensive replacement guy, or if he can enhance, again, I know I'm not joking about the bunting ability thing. Like if he can lay one down, he can certainly get to first base. He has the tools to be able to do that. So I just, I think right now, according to FanGraphs, he's the Rays' 6th ranked prospect. That to me seems a little bit high. I mean, maybe in terms of, pure athleticism, sure, I understand that, but I probably may be more bullish on, even Cameron Meisner or Tristan Peters or Mason Auer, guys that are lower than Greg Jones in the rankings. I mean, it's unfortunate because he's got all the talent in the world, but being able to put it together, I mean, it's just 88 WRC plus at 24 years old at AA, just to me doesn't really crack it.
I would feel more bullish on Jones's future if he was in the Astros system and in the Dodgers system and the Yankee system, not because of the player development is lacking in the Rays, because it's not. It's just because their offenses do not need any more help. They're fine. They can score runs. So a guy like him would be more suited to their needs. They would need somebody who can actually run the base as well, and they would need a defensive replacement, and they would need somebody who can, steal a bag here and there, and they can switch over from shortstop to the outfield if he's able to do that. So I just think in the Rays system, I don't see a path right now for him, and the Rays obviously feel this way too if they just went, hey, you know what, the thing that you've been working on for the last 5 years, that position, we don't have a lane for you. So grab another glove, kid, because you're going to need it.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many other guys too. We haven't even mentioned Aranda or Basabe. I mean, there's a long list of guys to get through for sure with all that. So we'll see. Best of luck to him, but I think he's got certainly an uphill battle going forward with all that. And I know we've joked about Tristan Peters, but not Tristan Peters, I'm sorry, Tristan Gray. Too many Tristans in the Rays organization. If Tristan Gray really pops off and takes care of the strikeout and walk issue that he's experienced, if he goes nuts in AAA, then maybe that forces the Rays' hand of, hey, we've got to designate a 40-man spot. Who's coming off? You got to figure out who's going to be coming off, and maybe that's where they have to eventually trade him.
And then again, if you want an outfielder from the left side that has some pop, hey, we have Grant Witherspoon also in AAA.
Yeah, I didn't even mention
the show. So, there's just a lot of I just don't see a path right now for Greg Jones.
Yeah, unfortunately. All right, we got one more question to get to, but first, Ulises, we have to tell the audience about something extremely important.
Yes, and so if you're listening to the show and you're like, oh man, I wish I could make those decisions and maybe I can get Grant Witherspoon sometime, Greg Jones, some outfield work. Well, you can do that by downloading the mobile game Ultimate Baseball GM. Okay, so if you've ever dreamed of being an MLB GM, you can do that with this game. You can manage every strategic aspect of your team. You can hire the right coaches. You can do the scouting and the drafting players, and you can navigate your franchise through victory. So today, Locked On Race listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when they use the code Locked On, LOCKEDON, in the game store. So make sure to go to your app store today and download Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today.
All right, I don't know if you heard my dog Perry in the background, but he has some strong opinions about Greg Jones. Perry, settle down back there, okay? I know. Let's see what he does this year in AA and AAA, and then we'll revisit that opinion. All right, this next question, final question of today's episode from John McNeil.
Hey, Ulysses and Kevin. John from Scotland here. So my question is, with the World Baseball Classic upon us, can you foresee a future when MLB expands worldwide? I don't think it would take very long to establish teams from Japan, South Korea, Mexico, Central America, the Caribbean, Colombia, Venezuela into contenders. It might take a bit longer with Australia and Europe, but the markets are huge, as is the potential. Would you guys be for or against such moves?
Well, Ulysses, you're the world traveler. What's your take on this?
I love this idea. John. I think expanding MLB teams to Caribbean, Europe, Asia is probably in the plans of MLB, but it would be in decades. I mean, you're talking infrastructure, player safety, travel schedule implications, ownership possibilities for people. It would be a really, really, really difficult plan, but if it can be done, it would be amazing. Imagine like each country being represented. You know, it's not only Canada having the Toronto Blue Jays, but you have the Vaqueros de Mexico, the Cancun, it would be really, really cool. And then each country having their representation. I think that would be amazing for the sport. I think you could get even more eyes on MLB, which MLB would love, and you would get more money through revenue, which they would love. They can tap into those fandoms, but you're just, even though it's a very cool idea, I think it would just take so much work that it just might not be ultimately possible.
I mean, the first step for baseball in terms of expansion is expansion within the states, i.e. Nashville, Charlotte, Las Vegas. And if you want to go bonkers with it, okay, add in Montreal as that international presence. I think what MLB is doing right now with their, not the World Series, whatever they call it, traveling the world, of having regular season series in London and Mexico City, I think that's a good start. Expand on that, add in Paris and Tokyo and Seoul, and go from there and see how that works out. As far as adding other teams internationally, I think that is a long ways away, if that ever happens. Maybe one idea would be to, as far as like AAA teams, maybe you have a minor league team in Mexico City or in San Juan or something like that. Maybe that's how you sort of weather yourself into that position. But I don't, and I quite frankly don't know how, players would feel with that. I mean, I'm sure they would, as far as, say they expanded to Tokyo, like I think for those players that do love the travel and do like new experiences, that would be awesome. But for those players that have families and would be away from them for such a long time, and the logistics and travel aspects of it, that could be a really, really tough sell. I mean, we already heard so many complaints about, what you did, a split season scenario between Tampa Bay and Montreal, and all the issues and headaches that would provide. And you also brought up a good point about infrastructure and safety. I mean, I know MLB is doing a series in Mexico City, but to bring a team there full time, there's a lot that you have to overcome and hurdle. I think even the U.S. government has kind of put out a warning to travelers, Americans, that if you're going to become a tourist in Mexico City, and some other states in Mexico, that you got to be prepared. I mean, there's things that happen there that don't happen in other countries, and certainly not in the US at some point. So I think there's a lot that has to overcome with that. I think it's a cool idea, but my, I guess, solution to this would be expand on, those 3-4 game series during the regular season in other countries, and then maybe add a minor league team or two to these other countries.
I like the minor league aspect, because then every team could have a minor league team in those countries, and now you can have rivalries within those leagues. Well, another thing, maybe if you don't want to deal with the headache that it would be the safety and the infrastructure and the time zone difference, and how long are they going to stay? How long is the Seattle Mariners going to stay in Tokyo? And then how long is the Tokyo team going to be traveling for Seattle to Oakland and Vegas and whatever? Like, it would just be a lot of work. So one way that you could potentially get around it without being a team is having series in these countries. I think that would be, I think football does like a London game lately. I think
baseball's been doing it too as well.
Yeah, I think the Yankees and Red Sox did it before the pandemic, and I think the Cubbies and the Reds are going to be playing in London this year. So I get it, but you could do that like one in Puerto Rico, one in Venezuela, one in Colombia or in Japan. Like, you could do that.
Like, have every team will have an international series. I'd be on board with that.
Exactly. And I know I've heard from football fans that it sucks. Oh, you're taking one home game away from us. We can't even see our team. I don't think we would hear that, especially from Rays fans, because if Rays fans are like, you're taking away 4 games from us at the Trop, is like, well, are we really showing up, guys? So
yeah, the other thing too is like I get with football where one game means so much, 1 over 17 as opposed to 3 or 4 over 162. I mean, if it'd be different if, hey, the Rays are going to spend a month in Tokyo, then okay, you could probably put up a little bit more of a stink. But one series, I would find difficulty to have too many problems and issues with that.
Yeah, or maybe they go on like a little tour, like, oh, it is a month, but they 1 week in South America, 1 week in the Caribbean, then 1 week in Asia, and then they're back in the States, something like that. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah. So, John, I don't know if Scotland is in the cards. I know that you're checking in from there. I think that would be
that'd be cool.
It'd be cool, but I don't know. I think there's probably 150 other communities that would be on the board before Scotland would be.
Also very cold, right, John? They would be playing with a lot of gear, because I think how much warm does Scotland get? It's pretty cold up there, right?
I don't know. I just assume greenery and overcast weather. I don't foresee palm trees in Scotland, unfortunately.
And castles, baby. They've got plenty of castles there in Scotland. Yeah,
that's true. And as far as expansion goes, I mean, are we on the same boat that the next 2 teams are going to be in Las Vegas or Nashville or Charlotte? Yeah. It's going to be one of those 3.
Portland. I mean, the Mariners are all by their lonesome there, so you got to get some.
Vancouver, even. Hey, you could do Vancouver.
Yeah. You could do another Canada expansion. That would be international. There you go.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for the questions, and thank you for making the Locked On Rays podcast your very first listen every day. Now make your second listen, the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast. That is also free and available on all platforms. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and we will talk to you tomorrow.